Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Tim and I got some requests from quite a few of you guys to see our rod arsenal for 2017. Now, the first time that request came in, Tim and I were both like, why do people even care? But then that request kept coming and coming and coming, and we kind of pieced it together. We realized that when you're on YouTube and you're watching videos and you're hearing what people have to say, you're trying to read between the lines because not everybody's telling you everything. And we realized that that is the case. At Tactical Bassin, we lay it out as best we can. But with that in mind, there were enough requests that, you know what, we are going to show you guys our actual arsenal for 2017, just our personal rods, which is still, I think when the questions were coming in, you guys didn't realize what an undertaking that was. Because even just my personal stash of rods, you know, you're looking at like 25 or 30 rods. Same with Tim. And then, you know, client rods and everything else. But we will jump in here, show you exactly what we're using this year so you know what our gear is. When you're making gear decisions and when we're recommending gear, you know what it is that we truly are fishing ourselves. Not that we're just selling you a line or trying to tell you one thing while we're using something magical and different. So we'll just jump into it. You might hear my baby crying. I mean, this is the real world, right? Tim and I, we both work full-time. Tim works in law enforcement. I guide full-time out here on Clear Lake and Berryessa and the Delta. And we both have families. And the stuff that we do on YouTube, this is us giving back to you guys. Somehow we managed to fit 3 videos in a week around the rest of our life. So when the babies are crying, it is what it is. But let's jump in here. We'll start with spinning rods because I have less of those. In my own lineup, there's 5 spinning rods. The first one, Dobbin 742, and I actually have 2 of these. I love that rod, 7'4", 2 power. That's my main finesse rod. And then I pair those with the Shimano Stratic CI4s. Love that setup. Got 2 of those. And then the next one will be the Dobbin 783, which is actually a discontinued rod. But I like that rod so much that I went to a friend of mine that's a rod builder, and I had him match that rod for me and build me another one. I use a lot of custom rods as well. And you know what? I actually shot him a text before this, said, hey man, can I include your contact info? I don't know if people want custom rods or not, but people want to know what we're using. We're going to tell them. So he said that was fine. So down in the video description, we'll give you a link to all these models, straight to them, the ones that are on Tackle Warehouse. The ones that are custom, I'll give you his contact info if you guys are into custom rods. And then Tim, he's going to show you all his stuff as well. But that 7'8", 3 power, that's all my bigger stuff. So like bigger shaky heads, but when I'm still finesse fishing, I still want to use that spinning rod, that sort of thing. There's a lot that I do with those long rods. That 7'8" is sweet. But my short ones are 7'4", long ones are 7'8". And then my 5th rod is actually a 0 power, and it's another custom that I didn't bother to reel up. It's just hanging here long on my wall. It's a 7.7 0 power, and a lot of companies don't even make 0 powers. Again, it's a custom. My buddy Kurt made this one for me, but what this is for is my insane ultralight stuff. I started going back to the Bay of Green Bay a couple years ago and fishing for the big smallmouth. And when you get on those northern smallmouth fisheries, guys out there throw little hair jigs. They call them all sorts of things, furries, or you know, they all have a different name for them. But they throw those a lot of the time on 0 power rods. And I throw a lot of really light stuff here at home too. So I wanted a 0 power, but I wanted a longer rod. So I had it built out to a 7.7. And that may seem like overkill to a lot of people, especially in like a 0 power, a rod with just insane amounts of flex. But the advantage is that when you're using really light line, because I run, 10-pound braid heaviest on this rod, when you're using that really, really light stuff and you stick a fish on that long rod, all you do is just load up that whole blank. And then instead of trying to fight against that fish and force your will on them, you just stick them, load that rod up, and then you just let them dig. You let them basically dig their own grave, right? They just battle themselves until it's over. Very, very easy on them, very easy on you, not a lot of torque on your body. When you fight them on a short spinning rod, it'll torque your wrists really hard. The long rods don't do that. The fight takes a little longer, but the advantages are phenomenal. And actually, Tim taught me that. When Tim and I started fishing together, you know, we always mentioned that Tim kind of came from that finesse end and then into big baits. I came from the big bait end into finesse. I was fishing all 7-foot spinner rods. I kind of saw the light on that one. So leaving the spinner rods, but still in finesse. NRX. I love this rod. You guys saw that in our top 10 favorite high-end rods. Just an amazing rod. What is it, like a 7.1? It's an 852C JWR paired with an Aldebaran. It's ridiculous. This whole combo weighs less than a Corrado. I mean, it's unreal. Excuse me. The next one is actually an older combo, but I still use it so much. It's a Loomis drop shot rod with the old Corrado E series, Corrado 50E. But this setup is what I throw my tiny Kitex on. I like the 2.8 fat swing impact or the 3.3s on just a light head. So much fun on that short rod. Then I've got a couple Shimano Zodius, medium and medium heavy, both paired with Corrados. In my mind, those are just workhorse rods. I mean, that's, what all do I throw on those? Spoons, spinner baits, chatter baits, light A-rigs, medium A-rigs, all sorts of stuff on those two rods. Just killer workhorse rods. Then GLXs, we got a pair of GLX, both 7'5" heavies, but one I think is the 894, the other one's the 895. So even though they're both rated heavy, one's kind of a heavy, the other one's an extra heavy. And then I pair those up with the new Metaniums. Just ridiculous combos. Kitekin, swim jigs, regular jigs. I do a lot of my night fishing with those rods too. Just really comfortable rods to fish. Next, I only put one here on this wall, but there are two of them. Daiwa Steez, 7-foot medium heavies, paired with the old Chronarch 50 MGs. That is a bad reel, man, and that reel is never going out of style. Those combos, of all things, if I had to say that there's one rod in my lineup that's just complete ridiculous overkill, it's probably these. Really nice Steez rods, super light, great sensitivity. And then when you throw a Chronarch MG on them, they just get ridiculously light. I'm almost embarrassed to say that these two rods are my Senko rods. And that is literally all I use them for. I set one up with a 5-inch Senko, one up with a 6-inch Senko, and I go. Totally overkill for a Senko, but so much fun to fish with. Next one is another custom. Reel is an Aldebaran. Paired up, it's a 7'6". This is actually my lightest square bill rod. It's for my tiny square bills. And a 7'6" square bill rod may seem really odd to you, especially because it's my dock fishing square bill rod. But you've got to understand that where I fish, it's not like typical dock fishing. The docks themselves are fairly spread out, and what I like about it is that I can reach back around pilings, right? Without having to constantly reposition my boat, I can get that extra shot, hook it around a piling, get back behind. And this rod, something about it, when I pair it with like a Lucky Craft 1.5 or the small River to Sea Biggie, pinpoint accuracy. I can go behind a couple pilings, hook it, and still land on the side of a piling I want to be on. Just a killer setup. Then two identical rods. These are both, these are my square bill, my main square bill, and my lipless rod. These are both the CBR 845s. We talk about these all the time. That's a Loomis rod. Both paired with Corrado 70s in 8-to-1. I like that really fast reel when we're burning traps. So two of those, so I don't have to constantly retie. And then the other rods are down here, so we'll jump over there. Okay, next rod. Dobbin 784 paired with a Corrado. This is one of those just workhorse rods. I have a bunch of these in my client lineup as well. They're just rods that do it all. Light jig rod, heavy A-rig rod, some of my top waters, throw all sorts of stuff on that blank. Next, another custom rod. Now my client lineup, I have a bunch of Dobbin 736Cs. That's our frog rod. But in my own lineup, I was on a roll with the custom rods. So I had my buddy build me one of those. Same thing, 7'3", 6 power, just a bad frog rod. And then paired it, got a recommendation from a buddy, paired it with an X-Sense DC out of Japan. Dude, that's a bad rod. That combo, I was never into DC reels until, I don't know, at some point I caught the bug for high-end gear. I fished my whole life with low to mid-range gear, and it's been fairly recently that I got the high-end bug. Man, it is so much fun. I'm not saying you have to have it at all. I'm just saying if you can have it, it's really, really fun. And that X-Sense is fun. Next one, Dobbin 746. It's another one of my really, really heavy jig rods. Also flipping. I don't flip with those super long rods. You guys know that. 7.3, 7.4, that's where I like to flip. This particular blank, that 746 paired with a Corrado, is just a workhorse and super sensitive. Really nice choice. Next, going back to cranking, 2 deep crank rods. This is my lighter deep crank rod. This is that St. Croix, the big cranker, paired with a Corrado. One thing you will notice as I'm rolling through all this is we're not very brand loyal. We tend to talk about some brands more than others, but it's just what we use. You're seeing in my personal lineup, I use different brands of reels, different brands of, like 5 or 6 brands of rods. If we find a blank, if we find a blank that works for an application, we run it, man. And that's what we talk to you guys about. That's when we're putting those links down in the video description, we're showing you exactly what it is that we're using. Or if we're giving you like a price point recommendation or something, we tell you that. But this from St. Croix, this big cranker, is a bad rod. Next one is a Dobbin's, the 805 CB. Their 8-foot crankbait rod. That's my big deep crank rod. 6 to 10 XDs, Lucky Craft Magnums, that sort of thing. Those bigger baits. You can get away with a DD22 on it, but it's kind of overkill for that. And actually that one I pair up with an Abu and Aura winch, which who knows if it'll still be on sale by the time you see this video, but at the moment it is on sale at Tackle Warehouse for dirt. And the Aura winch, we've talked about this in a previous video, that's Abu's lower end line compared to their normal winch, but it outcasts it. That is an amazing reel for the price, especially when they're on sale. And then my swimbait rods. 5 swimbait rods. 3 of them don't have reels at the moment because one swimbait season is coming to an end and the next one's about to start. So they're off getting fresh bearings. But from Loomis, both I always confuse it. Is it the 5 and the 6 or the 6 and the 7? 956 and the 957. The 956 is for my treble hook baits. 957 is for my HUDs or other heavy jig hook baits. And then also the Dobbin's 806 is another treble hook bait, glide baits, wake baits, that sort of thing. And then 2 908s for my big baits, the giant glide baits, the giant soft baits, all that stuff. And that, if you have hung with me this long, is my personal lineup for 2017. Those are the rods that I'm fishing with. We're going to shoot over to Tim's house, take a look at his setup. I'm sure he's got a bunch of ridiculous rods too. Let's go check it out.